I had to fight for my immigration. I had to fight for all my jobs. I had to fight exactly for the space I'm at. I had to fight to be in Manhattan all the time. Like you fight literally being on the subway, right? Like with elbows.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You know, I was actually nicknamed a fighter a few times in different companies.
Welcome to the Immigrant Experience in America, an immigrant human library, where we amplify and humanize the experiences of immigrants in the United States and around the world. Listen in as we add another story to our immigrant human library.
I had to learn what group I'm in when I came here the first time. I'm like, oh, okay, so what?
Yeah,
My
even
skin
harder for
tone
you
means
guys.
that I'm this, and
It's even
it's
harder for you guys. It's amazing. Honestly, you guys are my heroes. And we didn't talk about the mom thing. Being a mom who's black,
yes, and plus being a mom.
who's in those rooms with mostly male. I mean, you guys are just my superheroes. I don't have kids yet, and I don't know how you guys do it. It's amazing, and
Right.
I'm
I'm
grateful
just
for the
kind
path
of,
that you're opening because
but you find like in cultures like Japan or other low context cultures or high context cultures, where they deliberately bring these two groups together to show that the value, the experience, and the innovation and the newness of thought, and bring all that together. We all benefit from that. It's not that we shouldn't necessarily be competing, but it's just something about the space here where there's always, it's just, groups are just always pitted against each other. It's like this scarcity mindset that I don't understand. Why? Is it capitalism, the competition, the competitiveness? What is it? It's just constantly like the winner takes all. If you win, then that means I lose. So everybody's clawing to tear everybody down. And it's like, why can't we just like work? Can there be mutual benefit for everybody if we all
that's
just
right.
like,
So generally things need to be good for me, good for you, good for the community. Otherwise, if there's one of those three that's imbalanced, it's not a win-win, just like you mentioned. And so it requires to be very aware of our own ego, and it requires caring more about ourselves, which we're not quite there yet as a society in general. It's hard, it's a lot of the spiritual work in a way that everybody needs to do and find themselves and find that essence to drop the mask, right? And again, like the boomers went through a lot of trauma. Like they've known the war. They were raised by people who've known the war. And so, Gen X, I always thank Gen X, women Gen X, especially in the workplace, because they're the ones that, broke the glass ceiling and are still breaking the glass ceiling. And, we just had a female appointed as a head of the Navy, right?
yes, I saw that.
So the amazing things happening. And so as millennials, we don't always show our gratitude. And we don't always encourage, because a lot of the Gen X female leaders are also quite traumatized, and they're not also, sometimes they're not the best leaders. And so again, that compassion needs to happen. And that empathy needs to happen. And there's a lot of context, like you mentioned, there's a lot of context that just people need to be aware of and either teach others or just educate themselves on. And it's super important in order to just raise the consciousness for everyone. And, my first internship was in Japan, in Osaka, actually. And I got exposed to that culture quite quickly. And it was really interesting, I have to say. So I was there in 2007. And, as a female, what was really shocking, for instance, is that I had to go in the first two wagons of the subway between 7 and 9 a.m. in order to not potentially be followed or, if I go in the other extreme, sexually assaulted. And that's accepted. So the few things, that just...
Oh, wow. Yeah, it was kind of like that in Mexico. I lived in Mexico City for 2 years, and the women had to go a certain part on the train as well, because that was, it was kind of crazy. And that's part of my whole intrigue with comparing low versus high context cultures, collectivist versus individual, and the good, bad, and ugly from both, right? But we can learn from both environments, and the good things. They're good in both, and there's bad in both. But yeah, there's so many questions I have for you, but I do want to keep watching the time here. So
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you then, like, you've spoken a bit in and out about like your challenges and so forth in the workspace, but I just wonder if you want to broadly talk about how did it work out? How did you get to US citizenship? You just mentioned that. Like, what are some of the challenges that came along and how did you achieve that?
So I've had a few visas. I've had the F1 visa, the J1 visa, OPT that was linked to my F1. I've had the H1B, and that was the first year where it was back to a lottery system. Now it's practically impossible to get an H1B. I had a 50-50 chance actually to have my H1B. What was a little bit painful is that I hadn't paid for the premium service. And so technically my visa 8 months later, after submitting it on April 1st, had started and I didn't know if I had actually gotten it. So it was kind of interesting. And unfortunately that year I lost my grandmother. And so I was not able to leave the country to leave to my grandmother's funeral. So I think emotionally that was quite traumatizing for a young adult. I think I was 24 years old at the time. And so, that was painful. And then I think what's the most painful, and I don't know that a lot of people talk about it, is, you're very much dependent on your manager and the company that's sponsoring you. So if you happen to be a bit in a semi-abusive situation where the manager just, doesn't take care of you well, or just, isn't a great manager. And again, I say that with compassion because it's hard to manage people. You're stuck because until you find another role that actually supports your skill set, and you transferring of the visa is like not easy. It's, $4,000 on an H1B it's just like a brand new H1B. So there's a lot of trauma that goes into dealing with that, because already finding jobs right now, especially in this market, 2023, is hard enough, with 300,000 people that are looking for a job, especially in the tech world right now specifically. And, it's impossible to get an H1B. It's just painful. So I had it easy in a way. And I use my British passport to apply for the visas, because then language, it's just easy. They don't test your language. So for that reason. And, I have Indian friends that are still waiting for their green cards. It's been years.
Wow.
Years. And they can't switch companies because they won't sponsor. And so, it's just hard. You're looking for a job with companies that will sponsor you. So the pool is so reduced. And you're smart, you're educated, you're a good human being. And so you have to deal with a lot, definitely, as immigrants. And it doesn't matter, it's harder for Indians and Chinese. But, I was British and it was hard too. And I became a US citizen after having my green card for 5 years. And my green card was sponsored through my company, which I was very lucky, to have, because a lot of companies don't sponsor green cards. It was definitely a process, a lot of paperwork, a lot of back and forth with my lawyer, who I'm so grateful for. And I recommend to literally everybody I know. She was based in New Jersey and I never met her in person. We just spent so much time on the phone. Like, we know each other very well, but we've never met in person. Because also, lawyers, they take $400 just to answer a few questions that you might have, right? You're young, you're a student, you arrive and you don't always have that money. It's just difficult. And on top of that, as I said, I come out of business school and I just don't have the same opportunities as my fellow Americans. I just didn't. So the tech world adopted me and the startup world adopted me, and I got to do the most epic things and build companies and build that experience that a lot of the McKinsey people didn't get, because they were mostly, learning how to manage politics, how to build decks, how to, do a whole bunch of things that management consultants do. Whereas I was actually building companies. And so that's how I gained a lot of my experience building 26 entities when most people my age haven't even done one. it was a blessing in disguise. But at the same time, right now, as I said, I don't have access to the bigger companies because I got pigeonholed because of my background. And so it's difficult.
Right.
It still is difficult today after 13 years.
Wow. Yeah, Aditi spoke about that, the extent that she had to go to be like a Nobel Prize level, building that profile in order to get her green card approved, and the trauma that it took her, not being able to reach her lawyer and not knowing specifically how to build that profile in order for her EB1 change from one category to the next. So I wonder if you have, coming from your background, are there any pressures to manage, like supporting family, maybe your parents? I don't know what their financial background is like. Are there any pressures to balance supporting them and other people in your family, in your community back home? It's multi-country at this point, versus your own individual desire to just succeed, because this is America, and you'll find some young people who, I mean, all they need to worry about is themselves. Right. And sometimes, which it's like a double-edged sword, right? They have the freedom to pursue their own individual desires without having to have that responsibility of thinking about parents and supporting other people. But on the other side, you find sometimes they struggle with the drive and not having that same drive that somebody who come from a different place of responsibility might have, be more driven. And so it's like a double-edged sword. So I wonder, are there any pressures that compete with you just focusing on your individual career success versus other people who depend and look to you to be altruistic, whether financially or otherwise?
Yeah, that's a great question. The caregiver, community is definitely also, they're my heroes too, because when I first started, I graduated when I was 23, and I actually had my mom have to support me for another extra year, which I was very grateful for. Again, on an intern salary, you can't pay rent in Manhattan. So I was young back then, and 13 years later, my mom is not as young. And so it's, she's healthy, thankfully, but, you're supposed to, at least in the stories that we're told, at some point be financially independent and support your family, as they retire or get sick or things like that. And it's definitely something that's on my mind. Every time I see her, I always, support her as much as I can. We don't see each other very often, maybe, and even though it's still more often than some, maybe anywhere between 2 and 4 times a year. It's definitely something front and center for me, especially right now. We've had a few family circumstances change things, where my mom's a lot more financially exposed now than she ever was. And so it's definitely a pressure. I'm fortunate that I don't have that immediate caregiver situation. So to answer your question, it's on my mind, just like any single kid. I don't have any siblings, so the pressure is all on me. But again, like the universe has been very kind to me in the sense that I don't have to support her 100% right now. But it's definitely an immediate threat, if I may say, in the next year or so, that I might have to do that. And I've been currently job searching for 7 months, and it's been financially difficult just for me. And I don't have kids. Again, parents that go through what I'm going through right now, it's amazing what people go through. And the more you talk about it, the more you hear stories that are similar to yours. And so I felt quite alone in this journey this year, where I got laid off in January, and have been job searching very actively. And again, I'm very fortunate to have a network now. I've worked very hard to build it, but I've been here long enough to have one. And especially, coming from the background I do professionally, it's not a given for everybody, and it's still a struggle. So, it's definitely difficult. And right. I can imagine how others go through it. And I think, reaching out to your village is definitely the way to go, and asking for help and not being ashamed of asking for help is so important. as immigrants, as any human, to be honest, but as immigrants especially, because I can tell you that people, all they want to do is help. Sometimes they just don't know how, or they don't know when, or they just don't know that you need help. And just asking for help really is a beautiful thing, because it gives opportunity to others to feel good about themselves when they can and help, you know.
Yes.
So I have a little story actually related to that, if we have
Yes.
some time. I am wearing an evil eye around my neck. And the story of this necklace is pretty interesting, because I first arrived in New York City, and when I was networking at an event, I noticed someone wearing one, just like this one.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up to her and I asked her, "Hey, are you Turkish or Greek?" And she happened to be Turkish from Istanbul, and she was working at Colgate at the time. And she took me under her wing. I had just arrived 3 weeks prior to New York City, and she, passed my resume within Colgate, and she taught me a few things about networking, and she introduced me to people. And so I thought that was such a beautiful thing that she did for me, like really just selflessly, that I wanted to be able to do the same. And sometimes it's just hard to ask for help for others. So just to have a visual cue that we're from the same background, and especially Turkish people, the community is insane. They will take you in if you're a full stranger, feed you, and just take you in, and no matter what, when, how. Like, Turkish people are so warm in that way, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It's a bit different in other cultures, but I happen to have that example. And so having that visual cue to show others, hey, I have a Turkish background, you can come ask me for anything you need, is something that I thought was so beautiful, and it worked for me, that I wanted to do it for others. And so I've been wearing this necklace for 12 years now, for that specific reason. I got my mom to get one for me for my birthday, and I've kept it around my neck since.
From Turkey. Okay, so is it, I don't know what it means. I've been coming across this whole evil eye thing. Like, some people would put it on their forehead, and what does it mean? What's the background? Is it from Turkey, or like, what culture is it from, and what does it mean?
So it's that area, let's say, because Turkey's borders have changed a lot, right? The Ottoman Empire broke down after the First World War. So it's that area. So the Greeks have it, the Turks have it. And it's generally to help all the bad spirits stay away from you. So it's a bit of a superstitious thing, a spiritual thing, and it just helps protect you from the evil of the universe. And when it breaks, because generally it's made out of glass, actually, when it breaks, it served its purpose. And so it's definitely a cultural thing. They call it the evil eye in English. I'm not really sure why the evil eye, because it has a tendency that the word evil just is a bit negative, right, in English.
Yes, right.
It's a beautiful, positive thing in the culture, where it brings luck, it protects you. So a lot of Middle Easterners have the evil eye in a glass circle this way, that's right above or around the door of the home, to protect the home from any harm, fires, things like that, but also to make sure that no evil person enters the house. And so, yeah, it's cultural things like that.
Right. Yeah. So I was raised Christian. This is all I know, from the Caribbean. And so the UCM, my husband got me a cross. I think it's the same idea. It's a tiny little cross. From the Christian tradition, to keep evil spirits away, to protect you, and so forth. And so I guess it's the same idea. But I've been coming across a lot of people either having it on their forehead, painted somewhere, tattooed somewhere, or now I see it on the necklace as well. But I didn't know the true meaning of it behind that. So, but I'm wondering, have you been able to show up as your authentic immigrant self throughout your journey here, at work, socially, or do you feel like you've had to assimilate, accommodate, integrate? Like, what has that been like for you?
I think a combination. So with other immigrants, it's very easy to be your authentic self, because they know what it's like. I think with Americans, it depends on their exposure, their cultural exposure. So just like any country, people who are exposed to multiple cultures are just a bit more open, to understanding. And then others who are not exposed to multiple cultures are just a bit more hesitant, or just, more curious in a way, because they just don't know. It's a hard question to answer. You have to know your audience. And so you have to be able to adapt, but also share where you're coming from. And so the balance is really hard. Let's say you're in a situation, a conversation where I don't know, we talk about politics or religion. In America, it's very different to the European system or French system, let's say, or even English system. And you want to avoid having judgment. And when you are faced with people who have that judgment, it's being able to stay super sovereign in who you are and not get offended. Because you understand where they're coming from, which meaning they haven't been exposed to what you've been exposed. So you can't expect them to know what you know. It's like being angry with a kid who's doing something that they shouldn't be doing. You don't get angry with a kid. You just explain, hey, this is why you don't do this, right? And you show that level of compassion. And it doesn't mean you have to go around treating people like kids, but it kind of does, in the sense of showing a lot more compassion when others don't. It is super hard. It's super managing your triggers and your sensitivity. And, we'll fail, obviously, because we're all humans at the end of the day. And, when people say, hey, where are you from? And I'm like, well, it's hard to answer. And then I go on a 10-minute monologue, and then they just get upset or frustrated because you didn't answer their question. And, or people who say, oh, you shouldn't be sorry, because I say sorry all the time being British, right? And it's kind of rude to say, don't be sorry. Like, I'm allowed to be sorry, right? It's really just coming from a understanding perspective, and being very intentional about that is super key. So I feel like I've repeated that a few times now on this call. And so I always keep going back to that, because that's really the solution for everyone to be compassionate and happy. But, like recently I had an argument because I said the word a few. And for me, a few is a more than one.
Right.
If you look in the Oxford Dictionary, that's what it means. Whereas in America, a few means three, which I had no idea. So it's kind of really...
I didn't realize that was the general understanding, that it was three. Just like the interchange, people use couple. For me, I know it means, in my mind, it means two, but people use it to mean more. It could be more than two when they're speaking, right, depending on who you're talking to. But I had no idea. So people really do think it means three.
Three or more. So we had a huge blowout miscommunication based on that word. And so it's just really interesting. We laugh about it after, but in the moment we're furious, right? Because there's and so it's really about just not going there in the first place. And yeah, no, it's just super interesting. I think everybody's doing their best to communicate with words, and if everybody put their foot forward, it's helpful. And if you know the other person's trigger, it's easy. If you don't, then exactly, faux pas, and you just literally go there, and all you can do is apologize and show some level of understanding, and just move the ego away. And also, the need to be right and control others is really a thing. And I think controlling others, ourselves, in circumstances or situations, as well as just being judgmental, are things that we all need to work on. So
right,
I think in those situations it's always good to remind, saying, hey, let's not go and blaming or being judgmental. Here is my circumstance or where I'm coming from, and this is why I'm doing this, and the intention is this. And showing a level of understanding, I think, on the receiving end is always the best way to go about it. And conflict's always good. It's about how you resolve it. But
Right. Right. Yeah, but it can be so taxing.
It's
It
very
can be
taxing.
very
Having
taxing.
relationships and communicating with people is very taxing in general. I mean, they always say marriage is work. Like that's the reason.
Yes, communication. And that's what I've learned. Like this passive, shy person that I was before, even though I feel like I'm very direct. If I have something to say, I go right to the point. I don't sugarcoat it. But like this whole political correctness sometimes can go against people just authentically just saying what it is. Like if something is red, just say it's red. But because I'm so afraid of offending you, I am afraid to actually tell you that it's red. But until we actually communicate, just say what it is, then we can move the needle to say, oh, you know, so a lot of people are a lot of time just afraid to communicate and to just speak up, for whatever reason, repercussions, people might use it against them and all sorts of stuff. But,
Again, like holding space is something that's important, especially for us who are direct, like holding space for others who aren't is our job. And I think like being outcome focused as opposed to, this is how we want things to be and how and when, it's about the person in front of you. And so if they're more sensitive or more delicate or more triggered on that specific thing, it's our job to make sure that we support them in that journey to get to where we need them to get them to. And if we're faster, then it's not for us to smash into them and say it so directly that it just destroys that relationship or that person. And I think being sensitive is important. I think warm-ups, my coach has always taught me you need to warm things up to people. So if sometimes you need to be direct because of a time sensitive thing, you need to warm up people saying, I'm really sorry, I'm going to have to say this because of this reason, which is we have this deadline of X. And it might come across as a little direct, but I don't mean to be insensitive. It's just that I really need an answer for this reason. That's like a warm up that protects the person who's going to receive whatever you're going to say next. And so I think warm ups are really important for people who are direct like us, because then it really shows our intention as opposed to however it might land.
Right. Something I've come across that I've kind of determined just by observing as like a new person coming into this culture. We are so obsessed with saving the world and saving everybody. And I use the term that we can get codependent and this whole savior mentality that's here in the US, like we have to fix everybody. And it's part of the collective mentality, the collective culture. You see it sometimes in our interactions with other countries and when we go abroad. And right, you were just expressing about the need to control and the need to do this. Yeah, that's a huge part of the collective culture. And I don't know how we're going to ever get away from that because it's capitalistic mindset and driving outcomes and getting to results fast. Sometimes, I don't know, it appears that you have to steamroll people in order to just get to the end result faster. I don't know. Not that is the way that I like to operate. That's my perception. Is still just observing people when they're leading or managing other people. Like there's no space to slow down and warm things up or.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. And I have to say, like, there's a generational thing there for sure. I feel the younger generations are a lot more compassionate and patient. They love themselves a lot more. They say no a lot, which is beautiful. It's super empowering, and they teach us how to say no. I think in time that will fix itself, if I may say. Again, because we're lucky that we're the generations that did not know a war, at least in the US. And there's a generational thing to that, for sure.
Yes.
And I'm excited for that.
Right. I think I'm trying to get to the end, but I have so many other questions. So I'm just curious to know, what was it like for you dating here? Like, I don't know how much you can share. You kind of alluded a little bit to it being like, a woman in tech, an assertive woman and so forth. And how did that land? It was interesting for me.
It's a great question. I've learned a lot. in the past year, even so. And I got married and divorced. I'm in my early 30s. I think there are a few different layers, right? There's my immigrant story. There's my European background dating potential Americans or other countries. There's the fact that I was married and divorced. So there's a few different layers, right? So I think what's really interesting is that I'm a strong, empowered female, which can make my masculine counterpart feel unimportant, degraded, sometimes emasculated, given my directness and all that good stuff. And so I'm going to circle back to that concept of feminine energy versus masculine energy. This year, I've really focused on going back to my feminine energy, which is a lot of my essence, actually, which I didn't get a chance to use. I had to fight for my immigration. I had to fight for all my jobs. I had to fight exactly for the space I'm at. I had to fight to be in Manhattan all the time. Like, you fight literally being on the subway, right? Like, with elbows.
Yes.
I was actually nicknamed the fighter a few times in different companies because it felt like I had something to prove. And I did have a lot to prove, So what's really interesting is that when you date in America, first of all, a lot of the guys in America are very masculine. Whereas in Europe, I feel they're a lot more in touch with that feminine aspect. And I actually like that because I have a very strong masculine energy. That's that doer, that fighter, right? And so for me, my homework is to actually go back to that feminine side and be able to be that nurturing and receiving, energy that's a lot calmer, and sovereign, and hold space for that masculine energy instead of being that masculine energy. And so it really taught me to go back to that feminine essence, and leave all my masculine energy for my professional career. And so that's where it's balancing me out in my life, right? It's all about work-life balance. And so I've never had a work-life balance, especially as a chief of staff. You literally work 24/7. That's also one of the reasons I'm looking into going back into an executive role in operations as opposed to a chief of staff role. It's really like having that feminine be in a relationship with a true masculine energy and having that balance at home, but also in my own life, be able to be in that feminine, shy, relaxed. I don't have to fend for myself all the time at home, but at work, I can go there and be that fighter, right? And go change the world. And so I've definitely learned a lot in the past years of dating and just failing and understand conflict management, for instance. It's not always me being in my masculine energy, being right and being controlling and all that stuff. It's also being like, you know what? Even if I think I'm right, that's okay. You can win this one. And letting the other person, be the dominant, if I may say, and really working on that and being very sovereign in that, because I feel a lot of the feminism movement right now, it's all about being like men, doing, things like men and being in that masculine energy nonstop. And I'm like, that's not what feminism is.
Yeah.
Being able to be our true women and feminine energy, be accepted, but also be respected. An example that I give is that when I work, I actually tell people, whether they're men or women, that I'm on my period. And so I need to, take it easy today. And I actually say it in such a nonchalant, normal way that eventually they get used to it. The first time they look at me like, TMI kind of thing. And I'm like,
did you just say that?
No, it's not TMI. We're all women. 50% of the population are on our periods once a month for roughly 5 days to a week. It's a known fact. Let's talk about it.
Yes.
Let's talk about the fact that we smell during that week a little bit stronger than, what politically correct we should, because we're women. I don't know if you watched the Barbie movie, but it's pretty accurate. So, I think it's just about normalizing things and making it less awkward for people. And as I said, holding space, giving permission, and talking about things, but also letting that masculine energy be men's energy, and also giving them permission to be in their feminine energy. In America, that's a huge problem. Like,
my gosh, you just
guys,
you've been in my head. You're literally talking conversations that I've been having in my head Like every time I see one of these women, I said, I've watched a documentary on the women's movement in the US, and I say, I don't understand. Once you become a mom, you're so blessed to be able to have recognized this now because I'm raising a daughter. But you know what I've learned? My parents or my family blessed me with the opportunity, yes. So I learned Spanish and French from high school.
That's
Had
amazing.
amazing opportunities to live and work abroad and now living in the US, and it's really developed this very masculine side of me that I've heard you voiced. And it's not until you get to marriage that you really realize just how much this could work against you as a woman, right? And I say to women, I don't understand. I love being a mother. And as women, our role as mothers and giving birth and being nurturers. And so why are we out here wanting to replace men in the workplace? Because that's what I'm getting from this whole movement when I watch it sitting where I'm sitting. I say, why are we fighting and trying to replace men? What are they going to do? Are we going to send them to Venus? Because they have to play a role in this whole dynamic, unless eventually we don't want to recreate or reproduce anymore, and we just want to be like women. We stop having children and we just want to be in the workplace. But men can't give birth. So I am okay as an educated, independent, strong, empowered woman. I am totally fine being the mother, being the nurturer, being my daughter's mom. And because I tell you, that part of my personality, I have struggled allowing my husband just stepping into that masculine role that he needs to play. And it's not that, it's because I was so used to being turned on. That left side of my brain was so used to just going to get it. Something needs to be done with the finances. I'm jumping at it because I was single for a while and I had my own place and I was living the life. But when you get married and you're in a relationship, you can't have two leaders. I mean, I guess you can, but both of you are going to be like,
just like at work, if there's a co-partner or co-lead or whatever, co-founder, scope needs to be clear. Otherwise, it's a bit complicated, right?
It's the same in a marriage. It's the same in a marriage. And so for me, I find myself going back and forth and I'm saying, my husband is in tech, right? And he wants, we shifted her from Montessori where the teachers were like, she loves to dance. She's so creative. And he didn't like that. So we switched her to a STEM school. Okay. And she got taught robotics, engineering, all the stuff, right? And she's this very smart girl, and they're like, she's the smartest 5-year-old we've seen, whatever. So he wants her, and he's like, he wants to push her down that road. And yes, she can. But for me, having gone through like the full education, I've been blessed. But when you develop, I'm not saying not to do it, right? I'm not saying not to do it, but I'm just basically saying, like, ladies, let's step back here. I am fine being I have had to work to rebuild my feminine allure, my feminine energy. And my husband and I have had to have the conversation where I say, like, I have to switch off this left side of my brain where I'm just constantly like, like the go-getter and making space for my husband, because you have to be able to make space. Do you really expect your partner as a male who is, they have more testosterone than we do? Do you expect him to be that feminine energy in the relationship? You have to also sit down and determine that. And if that's what you want, then you need to find a male who is probably a beta that's going to be that feminine to you being more the dominant masculine role. But for me, I'm happier and more aligned in my feminine energy. I really am. And I've realized that, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing now and letting go of this very left brain side of chasing this career and going to the C-suite, because yes, there's a lot. You just basically put words to a whole lot that was going on with this whole women's movement and what I'm seeing playing out. I'm like, ladies, like, yes, on one hand, you want to replace men. It appears to me is what they want, but what role will they play? our role as mothers don't go away. It doesn't go away. I mean, they can't give birth, so we're going to have to do that.
I think it really is unique though to everyone. And that's what's important, is not to put, women in a women bucket and men in a men bucket. That's not how it works. Like, the feminine and masculine energy is very unique to each. And it's really about talking about it, and given permission. As I said, like, men need to feel okay to go in their feminine energy, as well as being okay in their masculine energy without the toxicity. And so in order for women also who have been raised into being dominantly in their masculine energy, that's not supernatural to them, give them back the permission to be in their feminine energy. But also you have women that are very naturally in their masculine energy and they're very happy that way, and they prefer dating men who are in their feminine energy. So just like you said, it's really like talking about it, being aware, and seeing what works for you, because it's not about the women versus man conversation. Like, I keep hearing that and seeing that, and it's so frustrating because it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the masculine and feminine energy within everyone. And so, culturally, just looping back to the immigration background, in France, working is not your life. You work to live your life. Yes. In the sense of, you travel, you have like 5 or 6 weeks of vacation a year. Obviously, from America's point of view, it's a social country. I get it now that I've been here for 13 years. I didn't when I first moved here. I was like, what do you mean a social country? Isn't it normal? and so, first when I moved here, unlimited PTO was not a thing. It came in a little bit later. It was a 2-week, 3-week PTO max. And I was like, what is this? Like, you spend your life working. That's crazy. But you end your day at 5, whereas in France, you end it at 7, 8, or 9 p.m., right? So it's kind of interesting to see that through different lenses. And, in America, work is really, really important. Your social status as well as your self-worth is defined by what you do in your career. That should probably shift in order to reestablish a little bit of balance, exactly for that feminine and that masculine energy to just be able to coexist in a more healthy way. Because, housewives are just as successful as a tech CEO. Like, they should never be left to feel, oh, you're not doing anything with your life. That's BS. That's like 2 generations ago. And again, that's why I say the generational thing is going to bring a lot of, like, most Gen Zs, they don't want to come back to the office. Why? It's, it makes no sense. You pay for commute, you spend 2 hours in commute. It's a waste of your time. Like, the younger generations are more about seeking their true purpose in life and having an impact. Versus, the older generations were taught to do a 9 to 5 and have a job and, have kids, and that was success, right? Like, success is defined so differently now. Yes. That's what's wonderful.
Wow. Yes, we've gone through so many deep parts of our conversation. Yeah, we could go for a few more hours, but out of respect for time, it's been the very last thing I would say. Is there anything, it says success leaves clues, and I think you've been highly successful, right? You've gotten to the point of getting your U.S. citizenship. You've had amazing roles working in the space, and part of it is that as first generation immigrants, being pragmatic becomes first over self-actualization. So you do what the practical is to earn the money, and then eventually you get to self-actualization. That's just the path for most of us. And so I wonder, what do you know now that you wish you knew at the start of your journey that might be helpful to others coming or currently starting?
I think reminding yourself that you have nothing to lose is the easiest way to harness the fear of being here alone, being here potentially as a woman, being a minority, is that if you fail, you go back to your home country, to your family. especially if you're young, right? Like it depends on what age you come here and what circumstance. Some people just win the green card lottery and they show up here, and I was so jealous, right? And good for them. And then, I feel I did it the hardest possible way. Is I showed up and I didn't even know where I was going to sleep my first night in New York City. And so I was roaming the streets of New York, and I eventually found a Turkish jeans brand called Mavi. And I was like, oh my God. And I went on the website and I found my first internship that way. And although they weren't going to hire a sponsor, it still helped me gain time, right? It stopped the clock because you have 90 days to find an internship on an OPT. Otherwise you get sent home. And eventually gave me enough time to find my other internship that did eventually sponsor me. But I think really telling yourself you have nothing to lose and finding the way to harness that fear, build your self-worth, and just go for it because it's worth it. I think that's like the biggest advice I could give. And asking for help is totally okay. And when you have nothing to lose, it's just a lot easier to ask for help because you don't care how it looks. You don't care if it looks bad. You don't care if people judge you. Being able to harness fear just helps in everything you do. And immigrating to US is not an easy thing to do. And first of all, kudos to yourself and show yourself a lot of empathy because nobody else will. And really knowing your self-worth and building that love tank is super important because it's a journey and it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So really being able to tell yourself that you have nothing to lose, build that self-love tank and go get them and ask for help, build that community. And if you're an introvert, it's hard. So finding creative ways to build that village to support you because, going at it alone is not easy. So I would say priority number 1, find a good lawyer. And I can definitely introduce mine. Priority number 2, build that community and that village that's going to support you. And then I would say, unfortunately, number 3, find a way to harness your fear.
Yeah, the pressures are amazing, I think, for a lot of people coming over. And for that might be the hardest, as you're saying, right? Because some people, their parents put a lot into the bucket to pay for them being here, and they come with that burden, knowing that, man, I can't fail. You know what I mean? So we recognize, if you're listening to this, we recognize the reality of that. But thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your time with us, your story.
Thank you, Simone, for having me. Story and my thoughts so openly. And thank you for giving me that platform and opportunity to do so.
You're very welcome. And would you like to share, you said you've been job hunting. How do people get in touch with you if they want to interview you, collaborate in any way, connect, share stories, whatever? How do they reach you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is on LinkedIn. If not, definitely through my email. So it's crystelle.desnoyer@gmail.com. It's fairly easy. CRYSTELLE.desnoyer, DESNOYER. And just a little fun fact, my last name means walnut trees.
Very
so my
good.
mom always laughs saying we're from the nut family.
Very good. Nice way to end it off with humor. It's been a pleasure sharing with you, and I'm listening to you talk and I feel like, wow, I feel so connected to you now. I'm just meeting you for the first time, but I feel so connected to you because I've heard your heart and I've heard your contemplation, and I feel like it's a lot of some of the conclusions that you've drawn that I feel like I've been contemplating too. And I'm just like, great respect. And I do wish you the best and hope that whatever your heart's desire or whatever it is, you never know. I've been reading Eckhart Tolle in the last few years. I'm so into Eckhart. He's really like changed my spiritual perspective of just surrendering to what life has for us. So you never know. It might be something greater. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be under something. It could be that you need to create all the experience you've garnered. It could be possibly mean that you might need to create your own. And so that's where I am. And I know a lot of other immigrant young ladies I'm coming across are at that point where they're like, I get so motivated when I consider like putting energy into what I'm building for myself. So I'll just drop that in there for you to consider, because you've had an amazing path of experience. And I can't imagine these companies telling you that you don't have enough experience with big companies. Imagine that, right? You get all the experience that you have gotten and they find a way to tell you no.
The most fun little story, if I may say, is it happened last week. It's a beauty company. And they told me that I was not qualified for that role because they were focused on companies or people that had worked at $100 million company that had done e-com and D2C and that were in beauty. And I said, I built a company from scratch that was in e-com and beauty. It was hair care that was doing groundbreaking digital marketing through influencers. We were scraping Instagram when nobody was. We built an internal product that nobody had built before at the time. It was 2018. And we went from 0 to 34 million and launched 3 countries in 18 months. And you're telling me I don't know what I'm doing just because it's not $100 million company?
Yeah. So then they're going to tell you you're not a good fit for some reason.
I think giving a chance is something that people need to do a little bit more. Everybody talks about D&I in HR right now, but I still feel that they don't give a chance to the underdog.
Right. And you may be dealing with some biases. Sadly to say, as immigrants, the part of the conversation is, I get it. You're competing. Are they going to try to hold a job for a person who's native versus giving it to somebody who is not originally from here? So, and sometimes that comes into play depending on who you're dealing with and do they have a friend or somebody that they're holding it for. They're just going through the motions of doing the interview, but they already know what they're going to do.
There's definitely a lot of that. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. In a way, I'm fortunate, and I understand my privilege. I'm an immigrant, but I'm white and I'm a native English speaker. Although we've established already that the British American language has huge differences and invisible differences sometimes. But I can only imagine what people go through when they're not, privileged in that sense. It's tough.
Yes, that's another conversation for another day. I wouldn't even try to go there. But thank you so much for sharing so authentically and for the time you've invested in our show. And I wish you much success. And if you're connected to Eugenia, I just know, and you're with Chief, so I know those ladies are behind you and the right thing will present itself at the right time. One thing I would just lend to you is just to enjoy the time. I know it's hard. I know it's hard being, you're just wanting that next thing that's bringing in the dough, and I get it. But if at all the season, if I, looking back sometimes when I had that chance, I wish somebody would have told me, try just to be present and and enjoy that time, because you when the next thing comes, you're going to wish that you did. That's because right. You're going to be on the grind again. So enjoy it the best that you can. Get out. I don't know, do something different. Just enjoy the day. The right thing will present itself. I really do believe that.
I do believe that.
Friends, as always, please subscribe, comment, and share if you enjoyed this interview. If you're passionate about telling immigrant stories, our team is looking for help. If you're willing to help with podcast production, social media, or Patreon management, please reach out to us. You can also donate on our Patreon if it's easier for you. All the links are in the description below. Thank you.
We thank our listeners around the world, and we appreciate your continued support as we build our human library. Please remember to give us a 5-star review, subscribe, and share with your friends, family, and circle of influence.